This conference is now being recorded.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the New York State ASBO webinar, Purchasing Essentials. My name is Matthew Darius. I am the Senior Staff Associate for Professional Development here at ASBO, and I will be moderating today's webinar. Your speaker for today's program is Bob Cavanaugh. Operator assistance is available anytime during this conference by pressing £0. If you have a question for Bob at any time during the webinar, please hit £7, and you'll be able to get right through to Bob and ask him the question. A Q&A session will follow this presentation. You may also send chat questions at any time during this presentation using the chat window indicated by a speech bubble icon located to the right of the presentation. I'll now turn the call over to our speaker. Bob, please begin.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm actually doing this presentation from south of Albany, so I hope you're in a warmer climate than I am, but I'm sure this has been a challenging winter for you all. As we begin the purchasing essentials, I'd like to note that in bigger districts, most of the time there's a designated purchasing agent who performs the duties and responsibilities of a purchasing agent. And in smaller districts, basically this is one of the myriad of things that a business official will have to do and or supervise the person who is doing it who might be doing several other things. So what I'll present here is really, in the first session, is the core information that is essential for you to understand and know, whether you are a purchasing agent or a business official or someone just working in the district in some capacity. This will give you a good overview. Okay, what I have here is what happens when you don't procure stuff. Well, what really stuff is basically commodities, supplies, and materials for the use of your teachers and anyone within the district, and basically public works contracts are for anything that entails construction, repair, and of a certain dollar value. So it really encompasses everything that you're purchasing on an ongoing basis to run the district. Now, I want to start right off here. This is what some of you know if you've been following school districts over the last couple of years, and especially since the Roslyn incident on Long Island. School districts have been bombarded with audits for many things, but one of the things that the auditors do from the New York State Department of Audit and Control is they've been looking at a lot of the functions in the purchasing office and basically citing areas where districts are not in compliance. So what my hope is in doing this review of the rules and regulations is that you'll have the necessary information to basically avoid these pitfalls, because they are some of these are minor, but some of these get blown up to be a huge issue when in fact they're not. But the hope is that you'll be aware of things so you can rectify anything before you get into a problem. Okay, what we're going to be doing is going over the laws that affect purchasing in New York State. We have the General Municipal Law, and I'll be going into details in the next slides, but the General Municipal Law, Section 102, basically deals with plans that have to be deposited for plans and specifications for project within a district. This General Municipal Law, Section 103, basically has a lot of the key elements that you have to follow in advertising for bids and letting contracts. And in all of these sections that I'm talking about, if you were to be employed in here, you should really sit down and look at the laws. They're not that cumbersome to get through, but they're really meaningful and have an understanding of what's covered in here. Section 104 basically deals with the need to have a purchasing policy in place and the ability of a district to use the state contract through the Office of General Services. This information is generally available to districts on an ongoing basis. General Municipal Law, Section 109, basically deals with the rules of assignment. I'll get into that a little more thoroughly later. And General Municipal Law, Section 801 deals with conflict of interest. Also governing this is a section from the New York State Finance Law, which basically talks about preferred providers or sources, basically from Corecraft, which is basically a institution where incarcerated individuals work on products, and they can be purchased by school districts or other municipalities without going through a competitive bidding process. And the other section, New York State Education Law, Section 17, 24, and 25, basically deals with the lease of personal property and ability to be able to use the dormitory authority to finance that. Okay, in New York State, also governing purchasing is prevailing wage rates and the WICS law. Now, prevailing wage rates basically mean that when you take on a public works contract, you have to pay the prevailing wage rate that's approved for your area. These wage rates are available from the department, but you really should know them. And if you're not paying the prevailing wage rates, you're subject to official action by the governing bodies. The other issue that there's been a lot of talk about to be trying to get repeal on the WICS laws. What the WICS law, it goes back to the 1929, but basically it puts the school district in charge of having to deal with all the general contractors rather than having one specific contractor in a building project or substantial repair project deal with all the subcontractors. The general feeling is if this law, it has been amended somewhat recently, but if this law does get repealed, the districts can save approximately 8 to 30% in administrative expenses dealing with this. The other things that basically govern purchasing might be any local administrative memorandums that you use in your district, and your local Board of Education policy, which is required by Section 104 of the General Municipal Law. Okay, I'm going to go into some issues on Section 103. Basically, and I want you to make a one change here, but what we define is the items that have to be bid, that we have thresholds for those. And I want you to note for commodities, that's been changed to $20,000 for commodities. So basically, commodities are supplies, materials, and equipment. And public works contracts, basically repair and construction of buildings, the level is still $35,000. I'm going to go in and read some sections of the law here. All contract for public works involving an expenditure of more than $35,000 or all purchase contracts involving expenditures of more than $10,000 shall be awarded to the lowest bidder, the lowest responsible bidder. In any case where the responsible bidder's gross price is reduced by an allowance for a value of used machinery, equipment, apparatus, or tools to be traded in by the political subdivision, the gross price shall be reduced by the amount of such allowance for the purposes of determining a low bid. So in this case, basically, if you have items to trade in, the trade-in value gets worked into the cost to see who is the successful bidder. There's other areas in case of a tie on any particular bid. If both vendors meet the requirements, the purchasing agent or the local authority can basically decide to award the bid to whoever they choose, or in some cases, basically, they will just reject all the bids and bid it over again. And the other thing I'll say here in dealing with sealed bids, and we'll do some of this in the next two sections, but basically when a sealed bid comes in, it can either come in the form of being, delivered by an individual from the company who wants the bid, as long as it's within the timelines. Can be mailed in, either certified mail or regular mail. And recently, with the advent of technology, there is provisions to take in bids in electronic format as long as the governing board has approved that and you have a mechanism to deal with that. So basically that's something, I don't know how many districts are using that, but there is a provision to do that. Okay, continuing on in general municipal law, there's other requirements here. Advertising for bids shall be published in the official newspaper or newspapers of the district, and basically annually at the annual organization meeting, an official newspaper or newspapers of the district will be approved. Such advertisement shall contain a statement of the time and the place when the bid is to be received. They will be publicly opened and read aloud, and basically once that's done and once the bids are opened, at the conclusion of the bidding process, anyone can take a look at those bids. And such bids shall be awarded and determined. The award will be determined and transmitted to the Board of Education at the next regularly scheduled meeting or special meeting if the need arises. Again, I said all bids received shall be publicly opened and read at the time of the place so specified in the bid notice, and at least 5 days shall elapse between the first publication of such an advertisement and the date specified for the opening of the reading of the bid. Obviously, 5 days is not an awful lot of time, so that's rare that people would only give themselves 5 days. I would recommend to anyone that you get any request for bids out substantially earlier than that. You want to give enough people opportunity to bid, and you also are better off if you get a lot of bidders that you might have a good price differential from the respondents. The other thing that I find in bids is generally when bids are opened, most of the districts I've dealt with use the services of the purchasing agent and the board clerk. So my rule of thumb basically is to try to have 2 district representatives who are appointed by the board to open and process those bids, so that if anything goes wrong, you have someone else there on behalf of the district besides the purchasing agent or the designee to review and follow up on any of these issues. Okay. Next, continuing on, the issue of piggybacking. The school districts are allowed to participate in county contracts whereby they can benefit from the prices obtained by the county. You also know that a lot of districts use cooperative purchasing services through their local BOCES, or they might have some other cooperative groups that they form. As long as that's under the auspices of New York State or a municipal subdivision, that's perfectly acceptable. The other thing, let's say you run into an emergency situation where you have a building falling down or something. There is a provision for that, so you don't have to take time to go through a public bid. In the case of a public emergency arising out of an accident or other unforeseen occurrences or conditions whereby circumstances affecting public buildings, public property, or life, health, and safety of property of the inhabitants of a district require immediate action which cannot await competitive bidding, contract for public works and for purchase of supplies, materials, and equipment may be let by the purchasing agent without going through a bidding process. I will say you really should be sure to meet the requirements of what is an emergency. We'll go through this a little bit later, but it has to be something substantial. You just can't use it for the benefit of getting around a bid to award it to someone. So I would recommend that you look at sections of the law if you are sitting in the chair to give yourself guidance. Okay, I've been reading through a lot of rules and regulations here, but the issue is if you willfully try to prevent competitive bidding, it is subject to a misdemeanor with penalties attached. We don't find much of that, but I like to have people know that the responsibility of the job and the importance of it does carry consequences if it's not carried out correctly. The other issue you might run into if you're doing a bid is basically a mistake by a vendor submitting it. I'm going to get into some of the section of law here where a unilateral error or mistake is discovered in such a bid. It may be withdrawn after showing the following mistake is known or made known by the awarding officer prior to the awarding of the contract within 3 business days after the opening of the bid, whatever period is shorter. The price bid was based upon an error of magnitude that it would be unenforceable and would be unconscionable to do. In other words, if someone put in a bid that said they made an error, which said they can do the job for $50,000, when in fact they can't even supply the supplies and materials for double that, then obviously that's an error, and trying to enforce that would be very difficult. The other thing that they will look at is if it's been a clerical error that's affected it, and you have information and papers to go back to look at and prove that it just wasn't an error in judgment. So this is a very rare time when this is used, but it is a remedy. And basically, if you run into this, if you do have bids that didn't have any mistakes in them, you can accept one of those bids that meets the requirements, or you could basically reject all the bids and go out and rebid again. I would only see that happening, in the case of if you only had 2 bids. But anyway, you could still award that bid. So it's something to be mindful of. It rarely happens, but you have to be aware of it. General Municipal Law, Section 104, basically grants school districts and other municipalities the ability to use state contracts. State contracts are basically administered by the Office of General Services. And what they are is the state will go through annual procurement practices whereby they'll get guaranteed prices for goods, materials, services. You can avail yourselves of that, and basically you have to go up on the state website, and you can look at the various offerings that they have. In some instances, you're going to find that it's reasonable to use them. In other instances, you find that it might be more costly than what you think you could currently do a bid at and obtain the items for something less. It's generally, if you use both of these procedures, you'll learn which ones are more competitive if you use the Office of General Services contractor or not. They do have some large commodity items, though, that in this day and age you might want to take advantage of, such as gasoline, food products, milk, and things of that nature. So it is something to know about, and you should get up on that website and basically take a look at that. I guess I jumped ahead in my slide there, but okay. General Municipal Law, Section 104, other things. What about if you don't have to do bids? Well, you have to basically have other procedures in place. You just can't go out with board policy and do it. So I'm going to go through some of the issues that you should be aware of. Goods and services which are not required by law to be procured by competitive bidding must be procured in a manner as to assure the prudent and economic use of public monies in the best interest of the taxpayers of the political subdivision, and to facilitate the acquisition of goods and services of a maximum quality at the lowest possible cost under the circumstances, and to guard against any favoritism, extravagance, fraud, or corruption. To further these objectives, the governing board, by resolution, shall adopt an internal policy and procedure governing all procurement of goods and services which are not required to be made pursuant to the competitive bidding laws as outlined in Section 103. Such policies and procedures should have a methodology determined whereby you determine what is the lowest price and the basis for it for the determination. It also should provide for alternative proposals or quotations for goods and services that should be secured by doing a written response, a verbal response, or any other method of transmitting the information. Basically, if you secure goods and services, let's say if they're in a certain dollar range of a board policy from, let's say, $1 to $1,000, they might say you only need a verbal quote on that. For a higher limit, they might say that you need besides a verbal quote, you have to get a written proposal for that. But you would have to go through that basically, and all of these items would be delineated in the board policy. So again, a board policy will generally state who is responsible for the purchasing, naming a purchasing agent, what are the rules and regulations that govern purchasing for things other than sealed bids, who can do the purchasing, and what are the requirements that the board is asking that be followed in making a determination for that purchase. General Municipal Law, Section 106. Basically, if you're doing a general a public works contract, you're going to have to be preparing plans and specifications that are going to have to be used to analyze the bids before they're awarded. And what the law requires is that the people bidding on the public works contract can obtain one copy of the bids and specifications for a cost of $100. If they want multiple copies, it would be $100 for every copy. And basically, it's generally the money comes in the form of a certified check, money order, or bond, or other obligation, or security deposit, and it's basically has to be left under the control of the chief fiscal officer, which is the treasurer. And at the determination, when the bid is determined, who the successful bidder is, and upon return of the plans, that money will be returned. If the plans aren't returned, the money is forfeited, and that dollar value is deposited into the funds of the district. I will say that when you get into plans and specifications, they're very costly to prepare, and the return of plans that aren't going to be used by an unsuccessful bidder will give you more operating room in dealing with the plans that you will need to proceed with the product. So it is an issue that you really should have to follow up on, and it's nice to get the plans back. Okay, Section 109. Basically, this covers areas where a vendor might try to assign a contract. So, in other words, let's say a construction company is awarded the bid based upon the Section 103, the competitive bidding laws, and let's say hypothetically that they get behind in their work, and they decide to sub that out to some other contractor. Well, they just can't do that without getting written permission from the school district. And if they go ahead and do that, really the school district's way of enforcing that is the fact that they don't have to pay for that aspect of it. So it's rare, but if a contractor does approach you about changing a vendor or something, you have to make sure that the written requirements are in place. And generally, you would be working on a big project with your architect, and you should involve them with using that and making sure that this all gets accomplished in a correct manner. Again, under General Municipal Law, Section 801, it basically prohibits. It's an area that deals with conflict of interest. The cite sections of the law: no municipal officer or employee shall have an interest in any contract with the school district of which he or she is an officer or employee, when such officer or employee individually or as a member of a board, has the power or duty to negotiate, prepare, authorize, approve the contracts, or in any way connected with the payment of the obligations. So this only makes sense. You wouldn't want to get involved with the conflict of interest, and sometimes what you might find is board members own companies within the community, and those companies bid on those projects. So that, should that arise, basically that board member should basically, make that known, and he wouldn't be able to vote on that particular issue. So it's generally not a big issue, but certain parts of the state it does become a sticky wicket at times. Okay, the other section of law that governs this is the New York State Finance Law, Section 102. It defines what's known as preferred sources. And basically, preferred sources, they're listed here, basically the correctional facilities and the name of their basically company or banner that they sell through is CoreCraft. You have issues where you can obtain things from the disabled and the blind organizations under the state control, veterans programs, and there are some programs from shelter workshops where you can buy things prepared by the mentally ill. Thing is, basically, if the product and service is available, it's basically a product that you're looking for, and it meets your needs, you're really obligated to use one of these sources. However, I want to make you mindful of the fact, we'll go to the next slide, the preferred source guidelines. Basically, the products are not forced upon you if they don't meet the form, function, and utility that you're looking for. And you can challenge the prices if you have one or more preferred vendor with price differential, and they'll give you the leeway of making a 15% differential one way or another to select the product that you choose is the one that you need. I don't know how many of you use CoreCraft. In some parts of the state they use a lot, and other times CoreCraft isn't in a position to deliver the goods and services on a timely basis. So you should really check this out and become aware of it. I know there's in some areas of the state where actually CoreCraft will go out and basically try to make their services known and promote their products. Okay, the other thing that again you deal with in public works contracts is the prevailing wage rates, which are promulgated by the Department of Labor. You must use those rates and to pay your contractors, and if you don't, it's a violation. And to assure that, you have to report. You have a series of reports that have to be done to assure that this happens. And basically, it only applies to projects that exceed $1,500. So it's prevailing wage rates are another issue that we've tried to change over the years, because sometimes you can really get a contractor to do the project for a lesser amount, but with the Public Works law and DOL in place, you have to pay those prevailing rates. Another section of the laws that I said earlier is the New York State education law. And basically what it provides for is a school district can basically lease or purchase public buildings for school support to be placed or erected on a site owned by the district. So you can use that methodology, and a way to finance that, what a lot of districts are doing, is you're using the dormitory authority. Basically, all this requires competitive bidding. You just can't go ahead and do that, and there's a myriad of rules and regulations that have to be followed. So this is basically to make you aware of that fact. I want to go back here and reiterate some of the things when bidding and quoting is not required. So you have New York State contracts, you can use the New York State contract. If you buy things through BOCES contract, basically they're going through the process of the bidding process, so you don't have to do it again. You can just buy from the BOCES contract. There's county contracts. If you team up with a county or another municipal subdivision, and they're basically letting the bids, you can have access to that, so you can use that. Again, the preferred source would be Corecraft or vendors that provide services from the blind and sheltered workshop. So that's another preferred way to do it, and you don't have to go through a competitive bid. Emergency purchases, we went through that. If there's an issue with health and safety, you can go ahead and make the necessary repairs in a timely basis without going through a bidding process to assure that of the safety of the situation. Sole source, there is a provision in the law basically where if you need a sole source product, in other words, you're standardizing on a particular software or teaching methodology or something, the board in fact can approve by resolution an agreement to that effect, and so then you can go and use that sole source without going through the competitive bidding process. And the other thing, we're at the very last thing, we're talking about secondhand equipment and other government agencies. Surplus and secondhand supplies, materials, and equipment may be purchased without competitive bidding from the federal government, the state government, any other municipality, school district, or political subdivision. So you find that a lot of times districts don't have a need for a particular goods item that they have, and maybe it's passe for them, but it might be germane to use in another district. So they can go ahead and do that, basically do that purchase, barter it, and basically make the arrangement without going through the competitive bidding process. Okay, I went through a lot of those items pretty quick, but I hope you're taking this in. Next, what we have here is a policy that was prepared by the Orange Ulster BOCES, the purchasing agent there. But this would be a typical policy. I'm not going to read it to you. You can look it over. But what you see is it sets forth the issues relative to purchasing under the competitive bidding process, Section 103, and also if there's items where you don't have to go through the competitive bidding process, where the thresholds are less than those required by law, they outline a procedure which they want used by the purchasing agent to assure that they're getting the best value for their money and the goods and services obtained are within the scope of the goods and services that are obtained are what the district needs and meeting the requirements of the specifications. If you want to, I would say there's a lot of the school districts put their purchasing policies up on their website. I know in my organization, Questar 3, you could look there, you could go into the website, Questar 3, there's a whole section on policies, and we have one there that I think is very good and a little more, it's a little different format than this, but you should use that, take advantage of that and don't rebuild the wheel. There's enough other things to do in this environment to keep us busy. Now I'm just going to blast through. I don't expect you to read it, but you can look at this on your own. And pay attention to the details in it. And those are basically the items that they're presenting are the items that are outlined in the law under Section 104 that should be in place in your board policy. Again, to get down to the conclusion of this is the purchasing agent or that person who's responsible for purchasing is appointed annually at what we call the reorganization meeting. And it should be known and it should be filed that only that individual has the power and is permitted to basically obligate the funds of the district. What we find basically operationally is sometimes teachers will come in and buy something and say, here, I want to be reimbursed. Oftentimes they are, but basically the only one who's authorized to commit the funds of the district is the purchasing agent. Basically, that doesn't mean principals can do it, supervisors, whatever. It has to go through the process of purchasing, and you see what the myriad of rules and regulations are governing that. That's the reason is that so these rules and regulations get filed, and it can't be challenged, and basically you're in compliance with the regs as they're stated. At this point, I've been going through a lot of information. I hope it wasn't too quick, but I'd like to entertain any questions that you might have now. I hope you didn't fall asleep.
If you have any questions, please hit 7# on your phone.
Okay. Anyone?
I don't have anyone yet. We'll give them another minute or so to hit 7# if you have a question for Bob.
Good. If you're thinking about that, I want the last page, basically, the input from business officials when we put this together, the Orange Ulster BOCES, the purchasing agent, Matt Coleman, the Angela Pierce, who is at Syosset School District, and Steve Zortner, who's the purchasing agent at North Colony School District. They helped me work on this, and normally they would be doing this presentation, but with the state of things as it is, they're tied up, so I'm doing this on my own. So.
Okay, we have a question from Margarita from Kingston.
Good.
Hi, how are you, Bob? Thanks it was a great conference. I have a question on the purchasing policy that you said if we buy from another governmental agency, I assume we have to put through the board as well, right? You said we make the arrangements between us and another school district, but I assume that has to go to the Board of Education as well.
Yes, you should. Yes, if you're gonna, it's the same thing. If you're gonna participate in a cooperative bid, you should get that approved by the board first.
Thank you. And my, I guess, last question would be, I know a lot of times, I'm very new in this position. I started in September, and I'm following all the policies that you just talked about. I am advising legal advisors all the time when I have questions, but any contacts that we can reach you guys, or do you give any contacts that we can call if we have questions?
Sure.
Anybody?
Yes, you could call any one of us listed on here and ask, run that past them. The thing that I like especially using the organization is we try to mentor people and help them. And what you might want to do is avail yourselves. There is a mentoring service through the association where you might be able to get someone who's knowledgeable that you could call or have you mentored on an ongoing basis. But you could call. I'll give you my phone number if you had issues you wanted to review, and if I don't know the answer, I could direct you to the person who could. But my phone number is 518-527-6085.
Thank you very much.
Good.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay, good. And what I'll say is, I went through this. The rules and regulations, this is pretty dry stuff. But if you're doing this on an ongoing basis, you really have to be cognizant of it and up to date on it. Most any district that you go into should or will have policies and procedures in place. I think part of the assignment is to take a look at that and see what's in place. And basically, you shouldn't have to rebuild the wheel in any operation, but you should be cognizant of what's there and the rules and regulations that govern that. In the next two sessions we'll be doing, basically we'll go into a little more detail on preparing bids and specs and best practices, because this is pretty much the governing rules. that you need. So we'll be doing some hand-on issues and some best practices reviews in the next two sessions. So I hope this was beneficial to you. Again, what I would say is if you're in this position, get a copy of these laws and look through them. They're generally housed in your district offices, or your business official will have them. And the other one that's in the assignment, the New York State School Boards, also included in their law book, they have a section that probably runs only 7 to 10 pages, but if you read that, it gives you a lot of this information in a composite format, and it gives you the references to laws that you might want to look up. The only other thing I'll add is if you have situations where you're not, if it's a sticky wicket or you're not sure of something, there are controllers' opinions on purchasing that are available, and you can generally get them off of the website. Or if you have the sections of the law, and they're generally, a lot of those opinions are updated and put in the jacket that's attached to the back of the law book, and you can look into that and see what the issue was and what the final determination was in bringing it to conclusion. So that's what I have for today. And again, I appreciate your attention. Thanks for your question. And again, if you need some help or guidance along the way, feel free to use the mentoring from the association, or give anyone who's listed on this call. You can basically get that information off of the website. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob, and thank you for attending today's webinar.